Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. And today is a heavy note taking day. Sorry about it, but we're talking about American industrial supremacy. Actually, that's the title, but it's kind of the foundings of American industrial strength, and you need to learn about it. All right. So let me share my screen and let's hop into it. Let's get into the mix. You know what I'm saying? So chapter 17, industrial supremacy. Okay. So some sources of industrial growth occur with these two fellas, Henry Bessemer and William Kelly. They both create what is known after Henry Bessemer's name, the Bessemer process. If you remember from last year in world history, during the Industrial Revolution, this process converted iron into much stronger steel, and steel would be later used in railroads, railroads, and construction of buildings, infrastructure of buildings. The inner workings, steel. And steel industry booms will occur in Ohio and PA, Pennsylvania, due to the abundance of iron ore underneath those lands. Also in Pennsylvania is the discovery of oil, and oil was mainly used or originally used in lamps and kerosene. That's in Drake's Folly, Pennsylvania. And then our guy, Henry Ford, who we'll talk about a little bit later, is going to make automobiles more affordable with his Model T and his moving assembly line. And he will also advocate for raising the wages of his workers. So seen as a man of the people, because as we get later into this kind of stuff, we will see that strikes are going to happen. Also, some industrial growth respect goes out to the Wright brothers, who were the first to fly, first to be in flight. That's going to lead to Charles Lindbergh's flight in the 1920s, where he crossed the Atlantic Ocean. And that's going to start the growth of the airplane industry and airline industry and all that. So that's in the 1920s. They're the brothers, and that's Bessemer. That's Bessemer. All right, so another thing you need to know for the test is this idea of Taylorism, which was nicknamed after a man named Frederick Taylor, where for his workers, he subdivided tasks with each individual having a specific task. So kind of like that assembly line idea where workers are doing the same task 8 hours a day. He will also make workers interchangeable, making, a less reliance on skilled workers, because it's at this time where it's always in the hiring process, are you a skilled worker? Are you an unskilled worker? And, skilled workers might advocate for higher wages. And that's something companies don't have, because, the company wants to make a profit too. And the only way to make profit is to pay your workers less. We've already talked about railroad expansion, but railroad expansion affected other industries. Obviously, sadly, the lumber industry was booming because you need to get through the forests of the eastern seaboard and in the west, and you need to cut these trees down. So, the business was a booming. And Chicago would become the main hub. We've talked about this at a time. Would become the main hub for the meat packing industry, slaughterhouses, cows sent from the west go to Chicago, get killed, get turned into meat, and shipped somewhere else, shipped all over the country for your T-bone steak. And also railroads led to the creation of time zones where, kind of each city at the time, like the colonies before independence had their own kind of currency. Cities and towns are going to have their own time zones. They're going to have their own time. So, it could be, say, here in Fremont, 12 o'clock, but in we'll say, maybe even Livermore, it'd be like 12:15. San Francisco might be 11:30, stuff like that. So there's Taylor, and here is the original map of time zones, and obviously it's changed since then because look at all these skirts. This part of New Mexico wasn't even given, or no, that's my line. That's the line. I was like, wait, what? But yeah, this part of New Mexico is Central Time, but this side is, yeah. So obviously these have changed. But there you go. Okay, sources of industrial growth. Gotta know it. The growth of corporations occurs, and what's a corporation? They are a group of stockholders who own a business, and this idea of limited liability. We've mentioned this term before, where owners of stock can only lose the value of stock if the company goes bankrupt. So if you own stock in, say, Apple, and Apple miraculously somehow goes bankrupt, you are not held liable for their debt, for their loans. You only lose the value of the stock you have. So if you've gained I don't know, say you have 10 shares in Apple, and Apple's at, maybe, I don't know what's at right now, but it's at $70. Let's just say $70 times 10, you have $700. Company goes bankrupt, you lose $700. You don't accrue their debt. Their debt is not split up amongst their stockholders. So one such corporation that comes up is Andrew Carnegie's steel industry out in Pittsburgh, PA. And he will own all aspects of steel production. And we're going to get into this. You need to know it. Oh man, you need to know this. Okay, that's why there's a lot of stars in these lectures, but you need to know the two differences between horizontal integration and vertical integration. First, horizontal integration is the buying of all businesses in a similar industry. It would later be deemed illegal because that's a monopoly. And an example of that is the Standard Oil Company under John D. Rockefeller, where he bought up all the competing oil companies. And, it would be say let's just call it U.S. oil and American oil. And then there's Standard Oil. And Rockefeller has all this money, say he has 50% of the market. And he will sell his oil at lower prices to run our fake industries, our fake businesses of American oil and U.S. oil. And then once they go bankrupt, he would buy their companies. And that's a monopoly. Okay, vertical integration is the owning of all aspects of production from start to finish. So horizontal integration is not allowed. Vertical integration is. So, for example, with Carnegie Steel Company, Carnegie owned the land that had the iron ore. He owned the storehouses, the factories that did the Bessemer process, making steel, and then he used that steel to sell to railroad companies and make that money. Okay, he make that money. Not to say Rockefeller didn't make money. Rockefeller made a lot of money too. So fun times. That's Andrew Carnegie, or Carnegie, whichever one you want to call it. Carnegie Hall. All those businesses are named after these tycoons. Some more. You have pool arrangements, which are businesses agreeing to divide up markets amongst themselves. Later will be deemed illegal. Kind of. The definition just sounds bad. Trusts originally had a different meaning, but later will be associated with monopolies and Teddy Roosevelt. I got to sneeze. And holding companies are, they would buy up stock in other companies, gaining more power and just creating. A holding company is like a big old, it's like a trust in a corporation, and they're just massively large in wealth. So it's almost like, Carnegie putting money in, say Carnegie's part of this holding company, and then he puts money into this holding company, which the holding company puts money into Carnegie Steel, making him filthy rich. Capitalism and its critics got to know. Most millionaires from this time often are thought to be self-made millionaires. However, that's not the case. Tycoons had a tremendous amount of influence. They would make financial contributions to politicians and parties. And Vanderbilt once said, "What do I care about the law? Hate I got the power." So basically saying, I got all this money. What do I care about the law? I got more money than these lawmakers and all that. Another idea that comes up is social Darwinism. We've kind of talked about this last year, but it's applying Darwin's ideas to humans. And it was coined by this man, Herbert Spencer, basically advocating, the survival of the fittest survived. And if you can't make money, you're a weak human being. You suck at life. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but it's going to appeal to business owners who are, it's going to be like justifying their wealth, and it's like an ego boost for them. Then you have this book, this writing given by Andrew Carnegie, The Gospel of Wealth, and in it he said the wealthy should donate their money to the community, and this is where you get like Rockefeller Center, Carnegie Hall. I don't know what Vanderbilt his name is after a school in the South, Vanderbilt University. Wealthy should donate to their community and give back. Probably given after much criticism was given to these guys for becoming filthy, stinking rich, that hey, you should help out your community as well, and you can name these things after yourselves. So here's Vanderbilt on the left. That's Herbert Spencer, and this is the Carnegie Library. Oh man, my sneeze, it's coming. More critics, Horatio Alger. He wrote Rags to Riches stories, and one such story he would write about is about James Garfield, who started out as a regular canal worker and would become the future president of the United States. It would sell over 100 million copies. Some more critics, you have Henry George writing about progress and poverty. He's going to blame monopolies for social problems as well as railroad companies. Edward Bellamy wrote Looking Backward, and this man woke up in the year 2000 in a utopian society where there were no wants, no politics, and no vices. So, you know, this idea of utopian society, you know, everyone shares the work, you benefit society. Utopianism, if you remember from world history last year. And railroads are ours. Railroad companies would come under obvious attack, and they were charging higher rates, and usually for farmers, even if it was like a shorter haul or you know, shipping from say like Fremont to Milpitas, it would charge more instead of, you know, being from Fremont to Santa Cruz. It's a bad example, but you know, they would charge more for shorter trips, and they would charge farmers more. Yeah, so sorry, farmers. That's the future President Garfield, and this is Bellamy on the right. Not that you need to know their faces or pictures, but industrial workers in the new economy, individuals who couldn't cut it out as farmers now are going to move to urban areas, hoping for new economic and social opportunities. That's why you move to the cities. Urbanization is what they call it. And also immigrants will be moving into cities. Between the time of 1865 to 1915, following the Civil War, 25 million new immigrants came. So you still have the old immigrants from the North and West Europe, but now these new immigrants are from Southern and Eastern Europe, okay? Italians, Poles, Russians, Greeks, Macedonians, Romanians, Turks, okay? Those are new immigrants, South and East Europe. Okay, and you also have something called the labor contract law, which allowed employers of these companies to recruit laborers by paying for their passage. That's just and they would work off their debt to their employer. Kind of sounds like indentured servitude much. Because again, these people have a lot of money, even if, you know, like you got a recruiter going over to Italy, going over to Greece, saying, we'll pay your passage, but you have to work for us for 5 years before you can start making money. Because it'd probably be cheaper to bring them over than to pay them individually from the start. Oh, I can pay this cheaper and I don't have to pay them a wage? Or I pay them a low wage instead and they work off all this debt with interest. Here's a picture of New York City, as you can see. This is a picture of an immigrant neighborhood. And you see all the high-rise apartments and the crowded streets. Okay, more about the industrial workers. We already know about this from the Industrial Revolution last year. You could almost call this still the Industrial Revolution time period, but working conditions, they are long, 10, 12-hour days. Machines replace some skilled workers. And sometimes, you know, those machines would break down or be at fault for, you know, decapitating a human. Factories will often hire women and children because they are cheaper to pay. And as we know, the textile industry, largest number of women workers. Lowell system much. Here's a young adolescent girl in a textile mill. Okay, so unions, gotta know unions. Unions pop up mid to late 19th century. So when in doubt, if you're ever in doubt, if you are given something about a union and a company and the government has to intervene, governments and the public will usually side with the owners, not the unions. So one of the first such unions of its day, 1866, was the National Labor Union. They excluded women workers, and they feared that it would lower the wages if women workers were involved in the union. And it's not going to last that long. You have these militant labor union groups called Molly Maguires. In Pennsylvania, they're going to advocate for violence when striking. You have the Great Railroad Strike, RR Railroad. You should already know what RR stands for. The Great Railroad Strike, where railroad companies cut their pay of their workers by 10%. So their workers go on strike, and Rutherford B. Hayes is actually going to have to order in the military to stop the strike and get these people back to work. So here's that area of where they were striking. And here's a picture of people. Was that the railroad strike? Okay, more about the unions. You have the Knights of Labor, which included all workers, men, women, African Americans, skilled and unskilled. And membership is going to grow under a guy named Terrence Powderly. But this union is going to be hurt by this Haymarket Square riot, where rioters were involved with the police. There was, some dynamite involved, and the Knights of Labor were associated, even though they weren't, but they were just the critics of the unions associated the Knights of Labor for causing this Haymarket Square riot, and so following that riot, membership is going to dwindle, and they're going to kind of fade away. You have the AFL, the American Federation of Labor, founded under our guy Samuel Gompers. That's a name. Gotta love that name. He only accepted skilled workers into this union. They advocated that women should remain at home and make me sandwiches. And they were more focused on bread and butter issues, aka higher pay, shorter hours. But they also used the collective bargaining tactic, and they hardly used the strike tactic. They would collectively bargain, handle their business with the company owners in a more civil way rather than striking. So here is what's his name? This is Terrence Powderly. And then this guy on the right is Samuel Gompers. And this is Senator Robert La Follette. We'll talk. He comes up in progressivism real quick. So some union strikes you need to know. Again, sorry for the over highlighted in red stuff, but you need to know it. And this is almost to a degree where kind of your eighth grade and world history knowledge kind of ends. And so these should be new ideas and topics that, yes, you've heard before in world history and whatnot, but this is kind of where the eighth grade US history curriculum kind of cuts off. And the junior curriculum for US history kind of begins circa after Reconstruction. This is definitely after Reconstruction, all right? So maybe that's why I went a little bit overboard, but you need to know it because unions cause, I won't say unions cause trouble, but critics of unions are going to discuss it, and unions become, I don't want to say an issue. It's going to sound like I say it's an issue. Unions just happen, all right? So you have the Homestead Strike where it occurs in Pennsylvania, where Carnegie and his right-hand man, Henry Clay Frick, no relation, wanted to break the union at Homestead, the plant would be shut down. And you have this Pinkerton Detective Agency were called in once the workers went on strike. And after the fighting, the Pinkertons actually left. So the governor of Pennsylvania had to break up the strike with the National Guard and put these people back to work. You have the Pullman strike in 1894, where it's the Pullman Palace Car Company trains, because they're called train cars. Trains where they cut wages, but they did not cut the rent in the town. If you worked for this company, and you'd have to live in the town of Pullman. So they cut wages, but they didn't cut rent. So you're getting paid less, but you're still having to pay the same amount of rent. So they're going to go on strike. The American Railway Union, led by Eugene V. Debs, who will be discussed more in Progressivism, encouraged the workers to go on strike. And President Grover Cleveland, the guy elected twice, will have to send in some troops to end the strike. So here's the town of Pullman. Here's Homestead, PA. And that concludes our lecture. So I know it was a lot of note-heavy stuff, but again, like I just said, this kind of takes off. This kind of takes place and happens where your knowledge of U.S. history stopped in 8th grade. So a little too happy with the red, but sorry about it. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you did, smash that like button. And as always, stay safe and wash your hands, people. Peace.